Hey everybody, it is Matthew of Mr. Domestic, where I spread joy and positivity through sewing and fabric play. In this video, I'm going to show you how to add a sleeve on the top back of a quilt to hang it, whether you wanted to hang it in your house, hang it in a show, hang it in a festival. There are various reasons why you'd want to hang it, and that's what I'm going to do here today. So, before we get into the content, anytime you're enjoying this, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Now let's have some fun putting on sleeves! So, okay, this right here is the start of it. I cut a long strip. I had 4 yards, so I used the length instead of the width of fabric. And this strip right here, this is 8.5 inches wide. Then I think it's 4 yards long. The way to determine how long you need is to find the top of your quilt. This is the last of 10 that I have to do. Which one's the top? The light is on the top, so ta-da! This is my legendary squares quilt here. And so, like, you could take a measuring tape and go blah, 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 and know, but you should know, like, the dimensions of your quilt. But this is what I do because I try to make this as efficient and effective as possible, so I cut out some steps. So what I do is I just take this, because I already cut it out, and if you don't have, like, long fabric, you can do multiple width of fabric strips and add them. So I just do it right here, and then I line this up with the top, right here, and make sure that it has the same tension on the quilt and on the fabric, otherwise it might be shorter or longer. Ta-da! And then, ta-da! Got to the end. There's still plenty. And then, let me get my scissors. I'm going to take my scissors, and then I'm going to snip it to where it's like 1.5 inches on the inside. Boom. There we go. This is the length that I need for the top tube. Now I'm going to come here, and I'm going to show you how I prep this strip. For you. Okay, so now I'm over at my pressing mat, and on this end, you're going to fold it and then fold it, and I totally estimate 1/4 inch right here. Like, we're not painting the Mona Lisa, folks. We're putting a sleeve on the back of a quilt, right? So, like, I'm not all about perfection in general, but especially here. I just want it to hang my quilt up good. So see how I folded it, and then I'm doing it again. Right here. And then I'm going to do the same to the other side. Hey, I'll let you watch me. See? Here. Just doing it again. Just an estimate. One here. And then here. And then I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do this. One before binding and one once you've already bound your quilt. But they both start the same, where I am going to edge stitch this right here off camera. And then come back here and talk to you. So there is one more seam to stitch up, but I wanted to show you something. So just pretend like this one does not have the binding on it yet. Then what I would do is, this is a raw edge, pretend. Let's pretend. And then I fold it like this, and then I would pin it, and then I would put the binding on it. And that's how you would do that. So this is one where you know it's going to be hung or in a show, and it's always going to be that way, and you can do it this way. It eliminates you having to hand sew this right here. And you can see I moved it over just a little bit. I will compare it to this edge, and then just make sure that they're even, since I estimated right here. And this one's a little short, but whatever, I don't care, it's good. And then the second way needs this seam sewn. So I'm going to head over to my sewing machine and sew this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then come back. Okay, now I brought this over here, and I did a 1/4 inch seam allowance. It's a rough seam allowance. It's not perfect. I'm cool with it. So now with this, as you can see, I did it wrong sides together because this seam is going to be hidden in the back. So people are going to think you're super duper fly and you know what you're doing. And then, once again, I'm going to estimate. I don't care if it's like perfectly in the center. I just want it roundabout in the center. And then I'm going to press this seam open. Or as I like to call it, I'm going to butterfly my seam. Like, seriously, I thought it was called butterflying the seam for the longest time, like when you butterfly chicken. But I was wrong. Let's make it happen, folks. Let's call it butterflying the seam. So I'm going to do this to the entire thing. And as you can probably see, like, it's not perfect. It's not perfectly in the center. This is going to be, like, the easiest, most estimated tutorial, and if you wanted to get finicky on any of these measurements, then go to town. But that's not my style. So, one. Okay, so I butterflied it, butterflied it, butterflied it, butterflied it. All the way open. Ta-da. And so, once you know how to put this, like, evenly, it's about 2 inches. You want it to be like an inch and a half from here, ideally. So if you wanted to measure that, go ahead. But this is how it's going to line up. This edge is going to be right up against the binding. And then you have a second edge here. So let me show you something. What I do is, at a minimum, I'm going to glue baste. And here I'm using Wonder Tape. It's temporary. It washes out. So if you ever wash this, no big deal. But it helps eliminate a lot of time for the seam. So I put this about 1/4 of an inch higher. And this is going to be for the bottom seam. Heat set it, heat set it, heat set it. Like this. Make sure this is butterflied. And then I'll remove this. I'm just going to show you this one section. If I can get it off. Yes, I used my teeth, folks. So I'm going to butt this up against here. And this is going to set that seam where you need it. And I'll show you what I do with it later. Just move this over like this. And just heat set it, heat set it, heat set it. So the bottom isn't moving. But once again, if you wash it, it's totally fine. Right here. And then I'm going to clip the top in place. Like this. And then once those are clipped and the entire thing is either glue basted, you can use this. It's a temporary glue base, and clip the top. Then we're ready for hand sewing. And then just wanted to show you one thing. Since I had the glue, I ran out of Wonder Tape, and this is temporary basting glue that I just estimate a line right here. If you're not good at eyeballing or estimating, you can measure it and then draw with a friction pen or a chalk line where this needs to go. But you run it right there, because after we do the top, we're going to shift the bottom and create a new fold line. And this is going to make it so much easier. So with this, it's the same thing. Let me just move it. And it's the same kind of heat setting. Just put it right here and heat set it, heat set it, heat set it, heat set it. And that is not going anywhere. It's going to make sewing that bottom seam so much easier, and you can skip so many steps. So now I'm going to get into hand sewing. Okay, so now I'm over in my hand sewing chair, and I wanted to get you started on hand sewing. And this is if you, once again, had the binding on already. If you did it the other way, where the seam is up here and then you put the binding on, you don't have to stitch the top this way. But you're going to hand stitch using an applique stitch is what I do. It's kind of like a really janky applique stitch, combo applique wide whip stitch, doesn't matter. But this is what I do. It's very similar to the stitch I use in the hand binding tutorial that I made. But I go back and forth between whether I start in the binding or start here. But you can see I got a little bit of the binding, a little bit there. And these are some wide stitches. I would say they're about at least a ½ inch. See where I'm going? And then I just go to town and do that the entire perimeter. But before I get to the bottom, I'm going to do something that will knock your socks off, folks. to where if those of you have put on sleeves before, you're like, oh my gosh, you're doing it wrong. It's going to be hard to hang. No, 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 no. Trust, folks. I know what I'm doing. So, I'm not even going to fast forward this. Hopefully y'all got the stitch. If you needed to see it, again, you can either like rewind this and watch this over, or you can go to the hand binding. This is less about the stitch and more about the process. So I have stitched up the top. Only let me show you. Can you see my stitches? See it. That's the stitches. And now this is where the magic happens, and it's kind of like a sciencey thing. Like there's something called surface tension. So if it was left flat and you put a pull in here, then it would bubble evenly on both sides, and there would be like a little lump because of the pull that you're going to put in the back. So to avoid that, you're going to relieve some of the surface tension in the back, and that's where that line came in. And now, because I have it basted, I'm just going to create a new seam line right here. Right here, and that's roughly 1/4 of an inch, so that added 1/2 of an inch in the back, which is perfect amount of space for a pull. So now I'm just going to stitch up this side right here. Don't close it, because then like you can't stick a pull in, and then stitch up the bottom. And that's all. And the final thing that I wanted to show, I've shown this in my videos, but like right here, see right there? That's where I ended and joined other thread. And let me zoom in. Can I zoom in? Do I got the trickery? Zooming in. Right here. Can you see it in the camera? There it is. So I have a self-threading needle, which I've shown y'all before. I don't know if it's gonna, is it zooming? Okay, this camera ain't working, but it's a cute needle. And and so I just stick this in here, and to where it's in and out, and since these are shorter, I thread them on the self-threading needle, pop, go like this, and I'm just hiding it inside the sleeve, and the rest of it will go through, and then I'm trimming it to where it looks cleaner, right? And then that's where it was. See it? It was right there. You can barely see it, but that's how I hide all of the extra threads. And ta-da! Now you can sew on a sleeve. Just in case you wanted to see some of these stitches, because it looks a little bit different, and if this is your first time, I wouldn't want to confuse you. Here, I'm getting the needle in between the 2 layers of fabric, so it's not coming out the front. It's just getting inside where the, what's that called? Where the batting is, and then I do the same kind of stitch. It's much easier to sew into this. So, ta-da! Now you can do it, you can do it. So yay! Now you can put it on a pole, and it's good and hung, and you're excited. So I admit that since this was the 10th quilt that I hung a sleeve on, that I was like level 10 hot mess in this. So hopefully y'all can follow, but I will have more tips and actual dimensions for those of you who don't like to eyeball in the blog post in the description below. But hopefully now you're not scared and you learned some tips and tricks to adding the sleeve to the back of your quilt. So if you enjoyed it, got a laugh, or a tip or a trick, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Keep it positive, y'all. Mr. Domestic out.